Welcome to The Explainer. There's this one skill that every language teacher has to master, and it's a tricky one: error correction. So today, we're going to break it all down. We're taking a guide and turning it into a real, practical toolkit you can use in your classroom, like tomorrow.
All right, let's just jump right in. Picture this, right? A student's talking, they're feeling good, and then bam, an error. We've all been there, and that moment right there is so critical. What you do next can either build them up or, well, it can make them clam up and not want to speak again. So, what do you do?
So we're talking about the correction conundrum. I mean, obviously, correcting learners is essential. How else do they learn? But, you can totally overdo it. If you jump on every single little mistake, it just gets exhausting for everyone. And there's a real reason this doesn't work. It puts up this emotional wall. When a student feels anxious, it's like their brain just shuts down to new info. So the goal here isn't to be a grammar police, it's to be a guide.
So, here's the thing. Your first step isn't even about correction. It's about a super fast decision you have to make. I'm talking split second. The moment you hear that mistake, a few questions should be firing off in your head.
So to correct or not to correct? That's the question. Let's actually break down that split-second thought process into something you can use every time. Think of it as your go-to 3-question checklist. It's all about making your corrections count instead of just correcting for the sake of it. Okay, so here's the checklist. Am I going to correct this? Do I need to correct this? And can anyone else correct this? What I love about this is how it totally flips the script. It's not just about, is this wrong? It's, is this the right time? Can they fix it themselves? Or can a classmate help? It shifts your mindset from, I have to fix everything, to, where's the real learning opportunity here? That's a huge difference.
And that leads to a really important point. You, the teacher, giving the answer should be the absolute last resort. Why? Well, think about it. When a student figures it out for themselves or gets a hint from a friend, they have to work for it. They're digging into their own brain to find the answer. That process makes the memory stick. It's just way more powerful than you just handing it to them.
Okay, so you've gone through your mental checklist. You've decided, yep, this one needs correcting and it's got to be me. So now what? What do you actually do? This is where the toolkit comes in. Let's look at some really practical techniques for handling those spoken errors. All right, let's open up this spoken error toolkit. We've got 8 really practical tools for you to use on the spot. Each one is a little different, perfect for different kinds of mistakes. Tool number 1 is all about leaving clues. So instead of just blurting out the answer, you ask a question. Something like, what tense should that be? Or are we talking about today or yesterday? You're not giving them the answer, you're nudging them towards it. It gets them thinking, and it works great when you have a hunch they actually know the right answer but just slipped up. Okay, tool number 2, recasting. This one is super subtle, and I love it. So the learner says, I will taking the train, and you just casually reply, oh, you will be taking the train. See what happened there? You didn't wave a red flag and say, wrong. You just modeled the correct version. It keeps the conversation going, and the idea is that the student hears the difference, that little gap between what they said and what you said. That's a really powerful, low-pressure way to learn. Tool 3 is called echoing. Now, this isn't just repeating what they said. It's repeating it with a little question in your voice, and you emphasize the mistake. So if they say, I see him yesterday, you'd say, you see him yesterday? That little bit of stress on the word see is like a spotlight. It points right to the problem and gets the student to think, wait a minute, something's not right there. Next up, tool 4, finger correction. This one's great because it's totally nonverbal. Let's say a student messes up the word order or uses the wrong preposition. You just count out the words on your fingers and you stop right on the one that's wrong. It's a simple physical cue that immediately draws their attention to the exact spot of the error without you having to say a thing. Tool 5 is all about using timelines. Sometimes an error isn't just a wrong word. It's a whole concept they're struggling with. Tenses can be really tricky, right? Especially something weird like, I was going to leave when he rang. Trying to explain that with words can get confusing. But if you just draw a quick timeline on the board showing past, present, and that future in the past moment, it suddenly clicks. It makes an abstract idea visual and concrete. All right, tool 6 is about being prepared. When you're teaching something new, don't just give one example sentence. Give them a model, a chart like this one, that lays it all out. Then later, when a student makes a mistake with, say, a preposition and a time expression, you don't even have to say anything. You just point to the chart. This is so good because you're not just teaching them the grammar, you're teaching them how to find the answer for themselves. Tool number 7 is a big one, delayed correction. Okay, let's be real. If you're doing a fun, communicative activity where the goal is just for students to talk and get their ideas out, the last thing you want to do is jump in and correct every little grammar mistake. It totally kills the flow. So what do? You grab a notepad and you quietly jot down some common errors you're hearing. Then, after the activity is over, you can go over them with the whole group. You get the correction in, but without stopping the conversation. And our last tool for spoken errors, number 8, is all about phonology. That's pronunciation. You need a different set of tricks for this. There's a cool one called backchaining. For a really long, tricky word, you have the student say the last sound first, and then you build the word backwards, syllable by syllable. It's kind of weird, but it totally works. You can also do things like tapping out the rhythm of a sentence or using rhyming words to help them nail a sound.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about spoken errors, but what about written ones? Let's switch gears and open up our written error toolkit. The big challenge here is avoiding that page that looks like it's bleeding from all the red ink. We've all seen it, and it's super discouraging.
So here's a total game changer for written work, a correction code. Instead of scribbling the right answer all over their paper, you just use a simple code in the margin. S for spelling, WO for word order, T for tense. It turns correction from a passive, oh, I got that wrong, into an active puzzle. They have to figure out what the mistake is and fix it themselves. Oh, and for sure, don't forget to have a symbol for good job. That's just as important. And really, the strategies for written work all boil down to the same idea we've been talking about. The goal is not a perfect paper, it's to build a better writer. So you encourage them to use that code to fix their own mistakes. You can even have them do peer correction. And this is a big one. You have to learn to wisely ignore some errors. If it's a mistake that's way above their current level, pointing it out might just confuse and discourage them. Focus on the next logical step for that student. So when you take all these tools, for speaking, for writing, and you put them all together, what's the big picture? What's the art of correction? It's about moving from just fixing mistakes to actually building autonomy. It's about creating learners who are independent and confident.
I think this quote really says it all. Very often, learners can correct their own production. A quizzical look or getting them to retrace their steps may be more effective. That's it, right there. Sometimes the best tool isn't a big explanation. It's just a raised eyebrow. Your job is to be the guide, not the answer key.
And that's what we're really aiming for, constructive correction. It's this idea that you're addressing an error in a way that actually helps them understand, builds their confidence, and pushes them to be more independent. It's about creating students who aren't afraid to make a mistake because they know it's just part of the process. So, let's leave it with this question. How can your corrections empower your students to become their own best critics? Think about that. The next time an error happens in your class, try to see it not as a failure, but as an opportunity to teach them how to learn. And that right there is a total game changer.